I caught up with Bob McConnell, congressional candidate for the 3rd District in Colorado, at the Tea Party Express stop in Grand Junction, Colorado on March 31st. And I can tell you that clearly there was a warm welcome from every veteran that we ran into. And we stopped and got a few words from Mr. McConnell on some of the issues of the day. How do you feel about the Commerce Clause being used to regulate everything under the sun? I mean, is there any room there for perhaps some sort of constitutional amendment?
Or we need to get a Supreme Court in that would relook at that issue, reinterpret that 1933 decision and just rein that in, because now the federal government is expanding into areas that were never intended. You look at the founders, Jefferson said, for example, the federal government ought to control 5% of government, the states 95%. Now we've got that totally reversed, and that's primarily as a result of that misinterpretation of the Commerce Clause.
As a member of Congress, should you be elected, do you see a sort of a conflict there with, a lot of the other congressmen are going to want to maintain power in Washington and not send it back to the states? I mean, what are your votes going to be on that?
Well, I want to send power back to the states, and the fact that Sheriff Richard Mack just endorsed my candidacy, he's the guy who sued the federal government, took it to the Supreme Court, and won.
What have you heard about the law in Wyoming that they passed, that the county sheriff is the supreme law of the land?
Well, and that's what the Supreme Court said.
No, I agree. I think we stand by the sheriff. He's the last great defense of American freedom, and then eventually we will restructure this so we have a balance. And the founders, when we talk about balance of powers, people traditionally think in this day and age of the balance between the executive and the legislative and the judicial. But the real balance in the founders' intent was the balance between the federal government and the states, and that's where we got so confused. And I want to push all that stuff back. I'd like to do away with all the federal entitlement programs, push that down to the states, do away with the Department of Education, push that back down to the states, major restructuring of the Department of Defense. I mean, they're tremendous opportunities to save money, but it will take people of courage to stand up and say, this is what we've got to do, because we're in an unsustainable environment right now. We just cannot continue to sustain the debts and deficits that we're building up. And the history of America is always giving to our children. And now we're in an environment where we're taking from our children. That's wrong. The most spoiled generation.
The most spoiled generation. We took not only from our parents, but now we're taking from our kids and our grandkids. We need to break that paradigm, and it's going to take courage. At the same time, we've got to stick by our commitments to our elderly. I go in the veterans' homes around the district, and was in Rifle the other day, and I met a guy from Normandy. The guy had been in Korea, widows, and you see the fear in their eyes about what's going to happen to my Social Security and my Medicare. Well, we'll stick by those commitments.